Let's begin with that.
Yeah.
As Bo says, it's not about being the most British. That's not what we should be aiming at. However,
The most English.
My dad isn't white.
Mhm.
So my granddad wasn't white, and he was a black man in the 60s who married my white grandmother.
My grandfather wasn't a quarter black. He was fully black.
I don't know what race he actually was because it was never something I really cared about. I mean, he was a very dark-skinned man, but I don't think he was sub-Saharan. I never really thought about it, because I don't care. I don't know, West Indian or something maybe?
Yeah.
I just don't know.
Well, you don't understand. My grandfather was a black man. Okay, he was 50% black. My 25% black grandfather wouldn't like your racism. He's 10% black. That 5% means something to him. We appreciate his 2.5% black heritage. Okay, real talk. He had one hell of a tan, okay? Leave me alone, bigot.
I'm not sure if Sargon really believes what he's saying, and he may just saying it because he wants people to believe that he doesn't consider Mediterraneans white, and this is related to his claims about being black, which morphed into claims of him being non-white.
That I have to actually look back and observe and study and understand.
Well, you'd be surprised, actually. My dad isn't white.
Mhm.
So my granddad wasn't white, and he was a black man in the 60s who married my white grandmother. And my father is his son, his oldest son, and then I'm my father's oldest son. So
Okay,
I might look quite white, but if you would see a sort of a genealogy of my family, it's not.
And it's very interesting, and I love this. Listen to this. The tricky thing is that even if his grandfather was actually himself only a quarter black, he'd still refer to him as black. My grandfather wasn't a quarter black. He was fully black. So who the hell knows how much black DNA he actually has?
I went in this alt-right hangout, and, there were like 8 of them and me, and my grandfather's black on my dad's side.
I watched Alt Hype's video today, and he
Yeah.
made the argument that you are not being completely honest, that you are part black.
I don't know what race he actually was because it was never something I really cared about. I mean, he was a very dark-skinned man, but I don't think he was sub-Saharan. I never really thought about it, because I don't care. I don't know, West Indian or something maybe?
Yeah.
I just don't know.
My grandfather wasn't a quarter black. He was fully black.
So Sargon claimed to be black. This way he was able to say, see, I'm not racist, I'm part black. Checkmate, SJWs. The problem is, he's clearly not black, and he blundered by showing a video of his parents playing a virtual reality video game. So he's tried to morph his past claim of my grandfather was black to my grandfather wasn't white. But how can he do this? Well, by saying Mediterraneans aren't white.
This is why the term white people is actually really not very useful. It doesn't really describe many people outside of Northern Europe and their descendants. Need to explain why culture across white people, or people they consider to be white, not including Southern Europeans now, I hope, suddenly now we're chucking out the Southern Europeans from being white. Mediterraneans aren't fucking white, okay?
And I suppose if you're going to bring up the black grandfather, you're going to point to his prior behaviors, like lying when it's convenient and smearing people because it's just too much of a bother to tell the truth.
But just out of convenience, you're going to tell everybody I'm all right.
Well, I'm afraid so. Yeah, it's a pragmatic maneuver. You got to understand, I've got to make fucking tactical judgments.
Well, you want to tell me that it's too much work for you to do that? Are
Yeah.
you sure? It's too much
It
work
really
for you
is,
to go
yeah.
through the labor of doing that.
Well, yeah, because, they don't really know what you guys are anyway. The SJWs don't care. They're too stupid. Not even, it's not that they're too
Why are you telling them I'm all right?
Because there's no point trying to explain to them what you are. They won't understand.
Acting in a politically expedient manner. That's what I want from a politician. Somebody who's willing to omit and lie when it's beneficial to them.
My granddad wasn't white, and he was a black man in the 60s who married my white grandmother.
My grandfather wasn't a quarter black. He was fully black.
100% British Isles. So I have a maternal grandmother that was from that bit. Is that County Kerry or something?
Called Mary.
Yes. No.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it was. I did meet her only once, and I can't remember it because I was very small. So my grandmother on the mother's side spent some time in Ireland, but
Right, so you're unironically as non-British as I am.
no.
My granddad wasn't white, and he was a black man in the 60s who married my white grandmother.
My grandfather wasn't a quarter black. He was fully black. My grandfather's black on my dad's side.
100% British Isles.
So you're unironically as non-British as I am.
No.
Checkmate, SJWs.
My grandfather's black.
So you're unironically as non-British as I am.
No.
You know what? Let's do even more. Let's update this video for a modern audience. Apparently, when that original video ended, some people didn't fully understand the point that was being made. Well, it's really rather simple. Someone who claims to have 25% African ancestry comparing themselves to someone of 100% white English ancestry and saying, "We are the same." These things are not the same. It has long since been known that Carl lied about having a fully black grandfather, as if that wasn't obvious enough by just looking at him. But since I published that first original bit of this video, there has been more information released, so I'm having a do-over of this particular shitpost. We can always do better, we can always improve. The podcast in question paywalled Carl's own results for somewhat obvious reasons. I highly suspect he remembers this dubious claim about being 25% sub-Saharan and didn't want people with a memory longer than 5 minutes to rib him over it yet again. But there has been a wonderful leak of that particular screenshot, so let's look at that, shall we? 46% Wales, 26% England and the northwest of Europe, 6% Sweden, 5% the Deccan and the Gulf of Mannar, that's in the East Indian Ocean, 5% Germanic Europe, 4% Ireland, 3% Western Bantu people, 2% Bengal, 1% Southern Bantu, 1% Ashkenazi Jew, and 1% Cornwall. Wow, 4 whole %. So black. Now, I know this is where you're going to get dumbass apologists going, "Oh, well, at least there was a little bit, he just got the estimation wrong." Because, you know, you just casually forget that your grandfather wasn't fully black, and that your father quite obviously isn't half and half. And you have somehow made it to your 30s not knowing that children inherit half of their DNA from their parents, meaning you get 25% from your grandparents. If after all of that you still want to make that claim, that actually makes him look like more of a dumbass. Or some other nonsense about how some of these things were considered black, or how some things that were historically always considered to be white were actually black, like Irish and Italian people, who were always known to be white, by the way. It's basically just a bunch of cope because they don't want to admit that someone told a dumbass lie. And I also know people are going to want to do the, "Oh, you're just being really petty, dragging up things from the past. Why are you even doing that? Are you trying to be relevant? Why don't you just go away and never say anything about the person that I like on the internet?" Well, what's more petty? The person who points out that someone lied in a fairly significantly big way about their ancestry, or the person who lied about their ancestry to win an online discussion? Which one of those is more petty? Lying to win a dumb internet conversation, or someone saying, "Hey, that's a lie, and you've now just posted the information that proves you were lying all along, which we all already knew anyway." And on this scale of you're just dredging things up and trying to make it relevant again, well, who made it more relevant? The person who is DNA testing himself on the internet to prove how white he is for his tradcuck pseudo-ethnat grifting LARPing arc? Or the person who sees that and says, "Hey, I remember a time when you claimed to be 25% black to totally own and checkmate those SJWs online." Then there's some other bizarre cope about how, "Oh no, black doesn't mean black as in sub-Saharan, literally the common vernacular for the term black. No, black actually just means anyone who isn't fully white or doesn't fully look white." Because, you know, someone in their 30s looks at someone who is maybe like an eighth or a quarter brown and says, "Ah, a black man." The "my grandfather was totally black" thing is stupid enough as it is. We don't need to invent other stupid things for someone to be thinking. Because if you do want to try and invent this position that he said black to mean someone who's like some slither not white or doesn't look quite 100% Aryan, then my brother in Christ, you think he is more stupid than I do. I'm usually quite happy to ignore Carl unless he's discussing something particularly relevant to my interests. I actually have a somewhat positive opinion of some parts of his podcast, although I do notice that the best presenters are always the ones who seem to leave after a year or so. All in all, when I saw that podcast doing DNA tests, I just looked at that and said, you know, I remember something very interesting about this topic. Let's see where it goes. And this is what happens. Someone says, hey, look at me. And then those of us with a functioning memory say, yeah, look at you. And then fanboys get mad at you for pointing it out.